Welcome to Rainforest, Lunch Without Lunch. I'm Amber Rowden. I'm the community storyteller here at Rainforest, Alberta in Calgary. We have Bridget Legault, who's not with us this week, but she's the community manager in Calgary at Rainforest, Alberta as well. I guess it would help if I actually shared the slideshow.
Sure.
That's better. So yeah, welcome to Rainforest, Alberta Lunch Without Lunch. If you are new to Rainforest, please share an emoji on the screen, a reaction. Please introduce yourself in the chat. We want to get to know you. And start those connections. So you can connect with us on social media at Rainforest AB and Rainforest YEG if you're in Edmonton. I want to start off with a land acknowledgement. So this video is from the Rosa Foundation and the Calgary International Film Festival.
Growing up, my grandma always told me that the land took care of us, and it still is taking care of us, and it never asked for anything back.
It is a way of life to always honor the environment. It's not something that you just can turn on and off. It's a living daily lifestyle.
A land acknowledgement is a way to acknowledge that we're coexisting in this land with the native people, and we should acknowledge that this is actually their traditional territory. But at the same time, we are all guests to this land.
The land plays a big factor in who we are. That's what makes us strong. That's what makes us strong people.
Growing up, my grandma...
Right. So each week, if I encourage you to share a land acknowledgement, if you're coming from somewhere else in the world, somewhere else in the country, in the province, please share your own land acknowledgement. And if you'd like to share land acknowledgement with us at the start of Lunch Without Lunch, please contact either me or Bridget. We'd love to have you share your own unique land acknowledgement with us at the beginning of Lunch Without Lunch. So what is the rainforest? Well, we've created an awesome video to introduce you to what Rainforest Alberta is all about.
What does it take to realize an idea or for a seed to sprout? At Rainforest Alberta, we know the answer is rooted in trust. Traditionally, Albertans have cultivated their ideas in established systems. Inputs that don't fit these systems are weeded out. Opportunities for growth are missed. But now, Albertans want a dynamic landscape that can evolve organically, like a rainforest. At Rainforest Alberta, we believe a culture of trust is the fertile soil where ideas grow. Our budding innovation ecosystem is a network of relationships pulling each other up as they push forward in their own field. Trust breaks down barriers. An open, inclusive network increases collaborative innovation. Successful breakthroughs inspire new ideas. A cycle begins. Rainforest Alberta is a movement to amplify trust by cultivating honesty, inclusion, and accountability. How? Our social contract holds us accountable to demonstrate trust across the province. We meet to have honest conversations around collaboration. This leads to more inclusive spaces for everyone to fearlessly build new ideas together. By raising the standard of trust, Alberta's ideas, talent, and resources can be evergreen. Visit rainforestab.ca to sign the social contract and start growing together.
So we use 6 pillars to guide our conversations and actions, and not all are weighted equally. Like any ecosystem, the right balance is crucial, and we measure these each year through our scorecard assessment. Our scorecard assessment will be coming out in Calgary in January, so stay tuned for that. So culture is weighted at 30%, and it's the heavily weighted one at Rainforest. It's the one we focus on the most. 20% for leaders, 15% for resources, 10% for engaged activities like Lunch Without Lunch, 15% for policy and infrastructure, and 10% for role models. So tips to making the most out of Lunch Without Lunch. Introduce yourself in the chat, what you're working on, what you're looking for, what you can offer. Please share in the chat. We want to get to know each other, build those connections, keep building trust, connect with individuals through direct messaging, put your camera on. It's always wonderful to see each other's faces, especially in the virtual world, and put a name to that face. Ask questions, put your questions in the chat. Keep connecting on our Slack workspace. Check out hashtag lunch notes for a capture of today's chat. And our recordings are always posted on YouTube. So if you missed this one or you missed a previous one, you can always watch them back on our YouTube channel. So each week we highlight one of the values of the social contract, and the social contract are 10 values that we work, live, and play by. They're a code of conduct that we exemplify in our personal and professional lives. So this week is honesty. And so I will be truthful and frank. I will break rules and call out the elephants in the room. That QR code will take you to the social contract. I will also throw the link in the chat, and think about how you can incorporate honesty in your daily lives and your professional lives and today and going forward in the week. I also want to mention that we are working on making our social contract more inclusive. And so we're working with Inclusity to make that happen. And so we're looking for testers to join that. So I'll throw that in the chat as well if you're interested in participating in that. So today we are joined by Alicia Wight and Meghan Donohoe, and they are both rainforest role models in their own sense. They work and they continue to do work with the rainforest community, and we're excited to have them here today. So I'll give you a little bit of information about them. Alicia has spent her life engaging with teams, ignited by her early passions for sport, where the team she was part of were the foundation of her support system and even introduced her to her partner. She started her career working in residence, which ignited her love for leadership, learning, and teams, and taught infinite life and leadership lessons. From there, she has spent her career developing leadership and talent and development programs across multiple sectors. And Meghan has spent her career creating learning experiences that help leaders unleash the potential of their teams. She especially loves to reimagine ways of engaging people at work and has been afforded the unique opportunity to build and launch the full cycle of employee talent and development programs across oil and gas and post-secondary organizations. Meghan is especially passionate about elevating the voices and perspectives of women in the workplace to create a better work experience for all humans. So we're very excited to have them here today and to lead our Rainforest Leadership Power Hour workshops during Innovation Week, which is happening next week. So if you can all join us in person, we'd love to have you here. But we're very excited to have them here today to lead us. So I will stop talking and I will pass it on to the amazing Meghan and Alicia.
Thanks so much, Amber. It is great to be here. I am relatively new to Rainforest, and I've just been so amazed by the interactions and what's happening here. And so I'm excited because I know there's a few first timers that maybe have not experienced before, and I'm really excited for you to be introduced to this community. So Meghan, we're going to dive right in, and then we'll sort of do some intros as part of it. But Meghan's going to share our slides.
I need Amber to give me the permission to do
The
so.
control. You need.
Sorry, Meghan.
Oh, there we go. I got it.
Perfect.
There it is.
All right. So we just have this brief statement. The world's changing exponentially. What got us here won't get us to where we're going. We would love you to share in the chat, 1 through 5, 5 being totally agree, 1 being don't agree at all, how you feel about this statement. So if you can just throw that in the chat, that's going to help us out. And I will let you know that throughout we are going to be asking for your participation. So here's some anticipated answers.
Lots of 5s. Let's get 6.
All right.
Oh, Ryan, you went right
6.
above.
Saw 3, 4.72. I'd love to know the math behind that. And so, as Meghan and I anticipated, there are a lot of people in this room that recognize all that's happening and all the changes that need to happen. When we looked at our language, the word exponential was not accidental. And so I'm not sure, can you just put your hand up if you know sort of the story of the lily pads and their growth? Can I see hands?
The who?
Lily pads. Lily pads and their exponential growth. Have you ever heard anything about these lily pads?
We're talking like swamp plants.
Yeah.
Those are the ones. So
Okay.
yep, the lily pads. So the thing about lily pads is that they will double their growth. And so you can plant your lily pads, and let's say they're doubling their growth every year, and you can do that. And by year 8, let's say you had a square foot of lily pads you started with and you have an acre pond. By year 8, you're barely going to have seen any growth. Even by year 10, you're going to see about 10% of your pond covered in lily pads. But what's amazing about exponential growth is that by year 16, your entire pond is going to be covered in lily pads. And so that's what we're talking about the rate of change. And so this really is what our driver was for this session. And so we look, Megan, you can go to the next slide. We were thinking about rethinking leadership. And what we came to is that it's more than rethinking. It's that leadership needs a rebrand. We need to really sort of disassemble and figure out where we need to go. Because what got us here won't get you there, which is a Marshall Goldsmith book about leadership, but it's about looking at yourself as an individual. And what we need to do is look at the collective of leadership and recognize that what we have seen as leadership and what successful leadership looks like, it's not the path forward. So I'm going to pass it over to Megan, because most of you already feel like we have you convinced, but sometimes you need some really good facts to take to your family barbecues for the non-believers in your life. So Megan's going to share some information around that.
Yeah, and you'll also notice that we don't pretend we have all the answers, and so we love to put the challenge out there that leadership needs a rebrand. We don't actually know what that rebrand is, so we're hoping that maybe today in this community, as we're all having this conversation, that it'll spark a movement of sorts around what we call leadership next, to really exemplify what leadership is, which is what we're going to talk about today. So what I wanted to share is really this exponential growth, as Alicia mentioned, is that things are changing. And here's some of the headlines that show us what's changing. So how the work gets done is changing. We can see headlines here around how freelance work is going to be more commonplace even within the next 5 years, that AI is going to supplement about 50% of low skill work, and that the way we engage with work, whether it's 4-day work weeks or different hours in which you engage with work, is also going to change, which then ends up requiring employers to focus on reskilling and upskilling, because the skills we need to engage in this changing work are going to be different. So you can see this really great graphic from Gartner where it talks about how in 5 years, the job that you applied for 5 years ago are going to have 50% different skills listed on that job profile in 5 years. And so there's a lot is changing when it comes to how we get work done. Then workers are also changing. So who does the work is also changing, and the skills that we need in this workplace will also need to change. So we're talking about how neurodiverse talent, I'm just looking, I know they had, it had animation on the slide. Neurodiverse talent will be imperative. It will require new approaches in how we all work together to get the best out of all the different types of strengths in thinking on our team. Managing ambiguity will be really important. We're seeing millennials and Gen Zs showing high levels of anxiety. And this is going to become more commonplace to have to manage in this volatile world. And so how do we find ways through managing this ambiguity and maintaining our health? Upskilling and digital dexterity will also be so important, possibly more than college degrees, where a lot of organizations are now moving away from requiring post-secondary degrees. And smart machines, they will become our colleagues. And so who gets this work done will change drastically. And then some of these values, so the folks coming into the workplace, our Gen Z generation, they are also expecting new and different things of the workplace. And so finally, the workplaces are also changing when and where the work gets done. So people are often, we used to think that workplace was a place, a concrete location, and all of that has been blown up as a result of the pandemic. We're starting to see different technology like the metaverse, or let's hologram ourselves into a workplace as ways to build greater social connection through a virtual world. And mobility, it's really going to help us with the mobility. About a quarter companies have purchased technology to track and monitor employees. So with this new location of work comes new ways of how we work, how our workplaces need to adapt to what we're doing with our employees and how we trust them or not. And then 3/4 of employees also expect employer activism of their workplaces. So they want to see their organizations taking stand on social issues, which is really then starting to blur that line between life and work. All of this is changing very quickly. And so as a quick summary, it's about how the work gets done is changing. Who does the work? Those workers. And when and where work is done in those workplaces. The future of work is changing. And so leadership also needs to change. It needs to keep up. And what we believed used to be good leadership skills, and what were good leadership skills back when our workplaces were very different, are now going to be some totally new leadership skills. And that's what we wanted to talk about today, is what are these new leadership skills that are required. So as a concept, Alicia and I were talking about leadership. And we said, well, what does it even mean? Where did it even come from? What is the etymology of the word lead? And it comes from Old English, which is one who leads, one first or most prominent, marching at the head. So it really, in my mind, gets this image of someone who's at the front of a group of people. They're bringing people along. They're at the very top of perhaps some kind of hierarchy. So it's the idea of those commands, organization or country, someone who's heading up those things. And then I also picked on this second one, which might seem weird at first, but I think it's fascinating because it also connects to our thinking around the rainforest, is it's a shoot of a branch at the apex of a stem or main branch. I'd like to propose that maybe leadership is more the root. It's the coming together, it's the bringing together of all people, and that we're no longer looking at leadership as the head of, or the front of, or the apex. And we're actually bringing it together and saying, this is the person who connects and collaborates and brings people together.
And Megan, I just saw there was a comment, and this is why I love this community, from Kevin, around it maybe isn't a rebrand, it's sort of a dismantle and a rebuild. And I couldn't agree more. And it's why I think, again, this community is so important, because I think that dismantle and rebuild is very hard in established corporations. But when you look at these new and innovative teams, ideas, startups that are going, this is the place for these ideas to be able to really flourish. And so, you know, this is absolutely the spot. I also learned that duckweed can duplicate almost daily, so I can use that in my next my next time round. So thanks, Jeff. So, you know, really, we're talking that leadership is not authority. I think so often it was sort of this title that got bestowed upon you, and almost like this binary concept of you are or you're not. And I like to believe that we're moving to a world that is not binary. This is not a thing you have or you don't have. Leadership is everywhere. And you know, I mean, I think if anyone, and some people I hear know both Megan and I from working with us at SAIT, if you wonder what we talk about now, you know. But we also were talking about the really most important things people have said to us, or some of the advice or guidance that we've followed. It hasn't been from the people that have that leadership title bestowed upon them. And so, you know, I was thinking for myself, one time I was sitting in a meeting and someone talking about another meeting where I was like, I don't understand why they said that. And their response to me was, Alicia, sometimes people are telling you what they need you to hear. Okay, that makes sense. But when you really think about that, I refer to that a lot. If I'm wondering, if I'm befuddled by what someone has shared with me, this was great leadership in my life. And it was a moment that this person, I don't think they probably would remember, because it was just one of probably many meetings that day. But it was 10 years ago, and I still think back to it on a regular basis. So what we're really, you know, the idea is that every time you speak, you have an opportunity to lead. And this is your chance anytime you're interacting with others, because what you say to them may have amazing sort of implications that you have no clue of. So as we look at, you know, we were looking at it's changing. So let's talk about why is it that we lead. So if you can see at the top, menti.com, Megan has put a code there, 22593421. And I keep getting a poll that's flashing. The poll keeps flashing up for me. And so if you could answer, why do we lead? And we're going to share that word cloud and talk about it. So just take a chance right now, log into menti.com. The code is 22593421. I can put it in the chat as well.
I'll put it in there.
Okay, so you can copy and paste. And we'll just give a few minutes for you to ponder that, or not minutes. We're not here all day.
I'm gonna switch my screen. Here we go.
Awesome. And for these, we can also share this, or Amber, I know that you have the lunch notes, so we can make sure that we share this word cloud as well, just on its own. Lots of great things in there, seeing, inspire, vision, legacy, engage, grow, because I care. And so a couple of things that stand out, and I think this is always, your facilitator's trick when you do a word cloud, is you're like, are we going to, what is what we think, what other think? And so, the good news for me is there's a lot of alignment, but the thing that's actually standing out for me is that there's almost as many ideas as there is people. And I think that's a really important part about leadership as we move forward, is that this is individual, and why people are leading is going to be different from one person to the next. And it reinforces the importance of inclusion, and our diversity of thought is recognizing what it is. What Meghan and I pulled out together when we were thinking about it is, the purpose of leadership has changed. So people's why is, inspire, care, connection, gather ideas, nurture, ignite hope, build trust. And then I saw a million more ideas that could be here. And so I think that where had we asked this question 20 years ago, the answers would be quite different from what we see now. So we're talking about, the world's changing, the workplace is changing, the workers are changing, and the why of leading is changing. So we need to be aware of that as we move forward.
What, any thoughts or comments on this? I see there's some in the chat. Jocelyn talked about totally agreeing you can lead from anywhere in any chair. Love that. People are starting to follow ideas. Leader coordinates efforts, which is really resonating within that word cloud.
This will be a controversial statement, but what about the sweatshop development shops that are clustered and everybody's piled upon one another and they're all group coding and there's kind of more of a number than they are a person?
Tell us more, Pete. Like, as in, why is that still something that exists in this world?
Well, it's the new model. I mean, if you go over to some of the big shops, there's 3 or 4 floors of developers, and or sometimes now they're working at home, but they're very much cluster coding.
Yeah.
The Borg.
They're bored. You think they're bored?
No, I said the Borg.
The board.
Like BOARD.
Borg. The
Borg.
Or BORG.
people all working together with one mind.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I think I guess the question would be how much of this new leadership thinking is really present within our current organizations. I like to imagine that a lot of us are seeing these signals coming about, and we're asking questions, and we're seeing that in some of like people leaving organizations, or this quiet quitting, or this all of these this shift in how people are wanting to engage with their work. And I think we've kind of hit this tipping point where we have to start thinking differently, but I haven't necessarily seen it. I don't know if other people have seen more of it. So we're actually going to talk about that, because we want to know from you, and in your breakout rooms. So Amber's setting up some breakout rooms right now, is what needs to be different about the way we lead today. We've talked about how our workplaces, our work, and our workers are changing. We've talked about how, we need to rethink how we even define leadership. And, maybe it's not even the right word anymore, because we're looking for people who can inspire and bring people together and connect and collaborate. So what needs to be different about the way we lead today? We're going to send you in breakout rooms. We want you to chat with the 3 or 4 people you have in that room for about 10 minutes. And then we're going to come back And we'd love for you to share. So if someone can take some notes and then add something in the chat when we get back, or if you're willing to speak up and share, we'd love to hear from you. How were your conversations? Good. Yeah. We'd love to hear from you. What were some of the things you talked about around what needs to be different about the way we lead today? Anyone want to share? You're welcome to share in the chat or raise your hand. Oh, Alan, are you clapping? Or are you raising your hand?
Raising my hand.
Oh, right, there we go.
Well, actually, it was really great. A very interesting topic. So some of the things we talked about were like empathy and people, because when you're not in an office with other people, they often don't get to see your good or off cues about where you're at with something. So knowing and being able to sense or find out what people are going through and how to help them keep moving forward. Engagement, because working in remote environments takes a different kind of engagement sometimes. Being people focused, empathetic and understanding, and helping people to remove barriers so that they can perform or meet their own goals. You didn't talk about this, but I just sort of thought of this as we were saying it. But goals, are you finding out what goals your employees have, right? Rather than only focusing on the goals of the organization, because there still needs to be that sort of evolution of your employees as well, and may lead them to other places in your organization. Expectations, it's not just expectations from the company anymore, but staff now have expectations of their bosses and of their company. And enabling people to work, the ability for them to work, like there's a lot of changes in mobility. Do they want to work somewhere else? Do they want to, can they effectively, work from a terrace in Paris? Those kinds of things to do their work here. One thing that we were just talking about right at the end was volatility. And, because there's this social pressures and different changes in our social environment around cancel culture, volatility, all those kinds of things. So how do we communicate how do we communicate when we don't agree? Those kinds of issues.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. Excellent summary. And you guys, it sounds like you had a great conversation just around that connection between the people and the organization, and the people and the leader, and how it's all connected. It can't just be one over the other. Thank you. Peyton, I hope I'm saying your name right.
Yeah, it's Peyton. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Okay, sweet. Yeah, I guess I was going to kind of mention the same things Alan was talking about. We had a very similar conversation about empathy and the idea of people kind of starting lower in the company and then being promoted up. And we kind of came to the conclusion that that's very beneficial, but at the same time, we need to be careful with promoting our leaders or over promoting our leaders. And I guess the example I gave was back in lower school, I had a teacher that got promoted to the president of the school and had to start taking on the role of managing people and dealing with all the teachers and students and parents. And they were just really unhappy doing that, because what they really loved fundamentally was teaching. And yeah, I guess somewhere in that conversation, that part of what they wanted and what their goals were got missed. And so I think when we're promoting our leaders from lower positions, we still need to provide formal training for them in order for them to really embody the role and do a good job.
Okay, so you talked a lot about how there still is a place for a formal leadership role within organizations, and it's about how do we prepare people for that role in a way that fits with what they want in their lives and their careers. Yeah, thank you for sharing. That's awesome. Jeff.
Yeah, so our group continued with that Captain Picard Star Trek meme. So Captain Picard, Captain Janeway, but it's not, the captain isn't necessarily the smartest person in the room, but they facilitate the right decisions being made. They lead with integrity. They aren't afraid of making the wrong decisions, but they're willing to fail and grow from it. Fail fast, learn fast, and change fast. Fear of failure creates paralysis. Fearless organizations. So there's a book about that, right? And distributed decision making. So if you trust your team, you're able to give them the ability to make decisions on their own. So again, going back to Star Trek, make it so #1, right? And one of the other things that came out was plants only grow if they're nurtured, but you can't make the plant grow.
That's right.
So leaders provide the tools in the environment to make people flourish. And then as far as providing motivations other than money, we had an interesting chat about, it can't all be carrot. So, 80% carrot, 20% stick can be a good motivation. So for instance, Steve Jobs, I think, is arguably one of the best leaders we've seen. And yet he wasn't always pleasant to be around. And he wasn't afraid to use the stick once in a while.
Great. Thank you for sharing, Jeff. I would love to get some new language around carrot and sticks too. And I do sometimes wonder how we might rethink that. But that is probably a whole other Rainforest conversation.
I worked with Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak for 9 years. And there was no carrot and stick back then. It was just accelerated expectations that sometimes people just couldn't meet. I mean, so it was like you were inspired to really try hard. That's all there was to it. And then if you didn't, I think because of the vision, people would just go back and try harder.
Yeah, interesting. So these are wonderful examples to bring up because we're referring to examples of leadership. Like I love, Jeff, how you brought in Captain and how you brought in Steve Jobs, because these are examples of leadership in a world that is now different. And so what does that mean? And this is where we want to start pushing your thinking around, are these the leadership characteristics we want to look back on and continue to emulate, or have they changed? And what does that look like? And so, we do not have the answers. And I don't think it's a black and white yes or no answer. It's a discussion, which I'm so pleased you've all had the opportunity to share. So I think next one is that Jenna.
Hey, Megan, it is Jenna.
Hey.
How are you?
Hello, good.
I'm so excited to be a part of this. Thank you so much. We had a good chat, a good conversation with our group, and we talked about how leadership is moving. It's moving away from that line leader, like you were talking about, more to that conscious leadership. And we really talked about the relational leadership, like building that relationship with your team and leading from that, building that capacity in others and lifting others as you are rising up. Where you're not necessarily worried about the opinions and perceptions of others. It's more about coming together as a team and lifting you all together. We talked about needing emotional agility as a leader now. It's no longer, you're barking the orders and the team follows in line. It's really that community effort. And then we also touched a little bit on how things are changing with the work-life balance. And I mean, that just comes out of the pandemic and where the world is at today. And that there's no longer that hard line between your personal life and your work life, and how is it that you make both of those work together. And just basically that it's a complete rethink from where things were in the Industrial Revolution to where we're headed now.
That's great. Thank you. Oh, great. Sounds like Lisa was in your group too. Great summary. Thanks, Jenna. We're going to get Ryan, and then Pete, I'm going to ask you to hold your comment until because we got a few more things we'll get through. And we do want to send you in another breakout room before we end today. So Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. So we kind of talked on a couple of things here. One thing that Riva shared, and I like this quite a bit, was the sort of fluidity and adaptability that you need to have nowadays. Obviously, the term VUCA came up a few times, but sort of changing our mindset and how we view leadership, more about being the actions and interactions between people as opposed to based on a specific role or position within an organization. And how leaders nowadays, need to be able to sort of adapt. But you might have a conversation between two people where in one situation, one person's the leader and then the other person, depending on what's going on, right? We also talked about how difficult it can be to understand the sort of motivations and drivers of your employees, especially sort of in a more structured corporate world where things can be a little bit slower to change and adapt. Understanding how to keep the right people because different motivators exist nowadays. It's not just about the benefits and the paycheck, right? So how can we do that when, a lot of the time there might be an assumption that you'll have a vision or a sort of goal to follow and rally behind, but sometimes that's not the case. And so if you don't have that vision or those values, how do you keep your people motivated? And then also making sure that we allow those who want to lead to be able to do so, which ties back into the sort of leadership at every level, right? Fostering leadership within anybody who's sort of wants to be in that position, right? Or wants to have that influence on people.
Thank you for sharing. And I love all of the questions you're prompting us to think as you've been going through that. Really, I love the idea of what is the impact we have on people versus the skills or the position that we hold. But every day as we speak, as we behave, what is the impact that we're having? So Alicia and I, as we were talking about these characteristics, we've been looking at the research, we've been looking at all the signals of what's going on in our world today. And looking at also the Rainforest social contract, came to, well, what could be that Rainforest leadership commitment that we all look to upholding and shifting our behavior so that we can lead for the future. And we really talked about this core of trust, which I think Al brought up in the chat there. But Rainforest leaders ignite trust by inquiring with curiosity. So that questioning that Ryan so well showed us with just seeking to understand and be curious about what we could or couldn't do and not having the answers, advocating for and amplifying others, nurturing and fostering connections, being that root in the forest, speaking with candor, so that honesty, but that kindness in honesty, and leading with generosity and compassion. So what we were hoping you could do is now, as you have this and you're sort of letting that soak in, we'd love for you to go out into breakout rooms again. We're going to try to put you into some smaller groups and get you to talk about this. And what I'm going to do is I'm pasting this in the chat here so that you can see what we've put forward. But who do you know that exemplifies the Rainforest leadership commitment? And Alicia, I think you have maybe kind of round that out.
Megan and I were talking about this. I think that I have witnessed so many examples of this, but working with Bridget, some of you probably know her better than I do, and some of you maybe haven't had the great privilege of meeting her, but she's someone who I have witnessed both in formal meetings versus just informally really raise up those around her and be able to advocate and amplify what they're doing and really pick out what is great about what they're bringing to the world. And I've also seen her be able to identify when things need to be addressed and when there's a conversation that needs to happen and how to pursue that conversation in a way that is fostering progress. So that's sort of my example, and that's what we're hoping you're going to share. It's just a brief conversation with you with maybe one or two other people to highlight that.
Yeah, about 5 minutes max, then we're going to bring you back to close it out.
As we move forward, the biggest thing that we notice when we're thinking of who exemplifies, it's this group of people. So everyone here exemplifies what Rainforest leadership is and that commitment. And I think it's important that we recognize all that we're already doing and see how we can continue to do it in the future. So the last piece of this sort of Rainforest leadership commitment is it's really about us taking the social contract and applying it to leadership and giving some behaviors for us to contemplate and consider. And so this is the same thing we showed you before, and the little call outs is directly from the social contract. And so there's so much overlap to what you already signed up for as part of Rainforest that it really speaks well to what I see the future of leadership needing and what we can all do. And, as we were having a bit of a conversation when we look at this advocating and amplifying others, we had a lot of similar people take the mic and speak. And so this is a great example of how do we notice these things and then look to shift. As a facilitator, we love having people participate. So we don't want to change the participation. However, we want to make sure that we're hearing from all voices and that we see sort of the full range of who is here. So these are the things we want you to think about. And we're taking this as basically our trampoline today. So I was supposed to say at the beginning, today was a teaser. Today is a teaser because as we go into Innovation Week next week, we are going to dig deeper into each of these things. Every day there will be an activity and some actions associated with them for us to apply what the new leadership needs and means, and some activities for you to try it on. And we'll be just by the tree at Platform Calgary, which we think is great. And we've tried to build off the the metaphor of the rainforest as much as we can through this leadership commitment.
Yeah, and please stop by because we will have things available all the time there. We're going to be there in person 1 to 2 every day, with the exception of Monday, which is we'll be following the blanket exercise. If you didn't get a chance to sign up for that and you've never done a blanket exercise, I really encourage you to do that. So we'll be there to connect with you, but you can also engage with the activities on your own as well. So it's a great way to go through. And just kind of one final piece, because we're hoping you will join after this, the launch of Inkly, because that platform and that mindset is exactly connected to what we're trying to do as leaders today, where it's around curiosity. So, using that curiosity scale, helping to advocate for and amplify others through those connections that you're making, and being generous and compassionate with your time. And I know, Mike, you have your hand up. Do you want to, is this for the next thing?
No, I was just really going to quickly say that we should also keep in mind the people that are kind of tangential to this group, that are not always here every week, but play key roles inside the ecosystem.
Absolutely. Thank you for calling that out, Mike. It's absolutely true.
I think that was our sort of, as we think of the ecosystem, it's not just about this, it's about the whole group.
So we really hope to see you next week. Alicia and I have been so thankful for all of your ideas and engagement in this conversation today. And I'm going to pass it over to Amber for community announcements.
Awesome. A big thank you to Meghan and Alicia for being here today and sparking these conversations. We're really grateful for the work that you're doing and continue to do for the community. And we're so excited for next week for the Leadership Power Hour series. I hope you can all join us, and thank you for sharing today. Big round of applause for both of you. So I threw a bunch of announcements in the chat. There's lots happening over Innovation Week. Lunch Without Lunch is not happening next week. Instead, check out all the events that I threw in the chat. I've included Truth, Tech, and Reconciliation, which is happening next week. Intellectual Property, which is happening at next Wednesday at noon. And then you can learn about building your own internal innovation ecosystem with our friends at Unbounded Thinking. I see Shannon on the call. And then Launch Party is next Thursday as well. We also have our Kairos Indigenous Blanket Ceremony, which is November 21st, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Listen to the Libby podcast. Every Tuesday, a new episode is dropped. And I also want to share that we are moving over. We are excited to announce our pilot and our launch with Inkly, which all of you are going to be invited to. We're very excited for that. We will be launching next week, the 24th. You will receive an invite, so please watch your inboxes for that. And if you have any questions, as always, feel free to reach out to me and Bridget. And there's a minute left. I'm sorry I stole the floor. Please, if you have an announcement, please raise your hand and unmute, and please share them.
I see Pete has his hand up, Amber.
Pete.
Just quickly, it's a free event this afternoon. If anybody's free from 2:30 till 6 o'clock, and it's Louis Riel Day at the Lougheed House. So anybody that's interested in the Indigenous communities and what's going on in that space, come on by. I'm going to go out and see what's going on. Thanks.
Thanks, Pete. Anyone else have any announcements? All right. Well, we are at the top of the hour. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. It was great to see you. Thanks again to Meghan and Alicia. And we can't wait to see you in person, hopefully next week for Innovation Week and for Rainforest Leadership Power Hour.
I'll be there. Thank you.
Thanks,
Awesome.
everyone.
Have a great week, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.